Hello, everyone. Welcome to IPR Talks, brought to you by IPR, a division of the International Board of Specialty Certification, IBSC. I'm Juan Cardona, IPR exam representative, and today on our very first episode, we have a conversation that's been a long time coming. Joining us is Graham Pierce, Chairman and CEO of the IBSC, the organization behind IPR's certification standards worldwide. Graham, welcome to IPR Talks.
Thank you so much, Juan. It's great to be here.
Awesome. We're going to go ahead and get started. So here's the first question. Let's say, before talking about IPR, tell me about the problem. What happens in pre-hospital care when a provider holds a title, but nobody has actually certified whether they are competent?
Well, yeah, that's exactly why we came to be as an organization. The IBSC it exists where there is no standard, that we bring a standard to practice. So a candidate can go to education. The first thing that we need to have is great education, right? We go to university, we go to a college, and we get the education that we need. But having an education, having a degree does not prove competency. You have to have an independent verified exam in order to prove competency. And that's where the IBSC comes in. As an organization, we have never gone out looking for other organizations to tell them, hey, would you like an exam? It has always been the opposite, where organizations come to us and ask us, hey, you are the experts in this. Can you help us create a standard? And that's exactly how we got involved with IPR.
Great, great. Can a provider with 15 years of experience be out of date? How would you respond to someone who says, I don't need to certify. I've been doing this for years, which is something we hear commonly from people all across the world.
Well, yeah. That is a real issue. And we are approached by many people who have vast experience working in pre-hospital care. But the lessons that they learn very quickly is, I'll give you examples. In the world of flight paramedicine, we have so many advanced critical care paramedics that came and they thought that what they were doing was critical care medicine. And then they sat down and they took the exam, which proves your competency. And then, of course, they failed miserably on the exam. So the exam is the litmus test. It shows you where you're at, what the gap is between you and what the standard is. So it doesn't matter, education is evolving. EMS is evolving every minute, every day. We're having these fantastic changes happening in EMS, but we have to stay up with that. And that's the reason that we have recertification through IPR, so that clinician is up to speed with the exact standard for the area that they're working in.
Excellent. And we know that the standards, they're not always the same. It's a big world. There's a lot of different, the training times in terms of months versus years. And a lot of times there's no standard. We're trying to bring some sort of, equality, right? Some sort of level that everyone can perform at.
That's exactly right.
Excellent. So IPR was built from within by people inside the pre-hospital community who saw a real gap, especially in Latin America. As IBSC chair, what was the diagnosis that made creating IPR a necessity?
Well, it was exactly the same when we first began in the IBSC. The reason that we started the IBSC was based around the flight paramedic certification. And the issue at that time was, if you stepped out of a helicopter in California or in New York, you could get very, very different paramedics working on those helicopters, and the standard of care that you received was going to be very different. Exactly the same applies here. If my mother is traveling in the state of Texas and gets into a car accident, I want the person stepping out of that ambulance to be competent and to be verified and certified. Exactly the same is true as if I'm traveling in Ecuador with my mother, and now we get into a car wreck. Why should I get a different standard of care to save my life in Ecuador than in Texas? That makes no sense at all. So we have to have, when there is an international standard, we should all adhere to that standard. And just remember, we, our parents, our partner, or ourselves could depend on that life-saving care one day. We owe it to people to be the best that we can possibly be.
Absolutely. I could not agree with you more. Awesome. IPR doesn't license. sanction or even define scope of practice. So what does it actually do?
Yeah, that is a great question, and it needs clarification. So the IBSC and IPR have nothing to do with you getting your license to practice. That is all done at the state and local level. Okay. You still need all of those things. Okay. What we do is we provide a certification verification of competency. That's what we do. But it's got absolutely nothing to do with your license to practice, which must come locally and is controlled by your local EMS system.
Okay. My next question has to do with certification. IPR certification expires every 2 years. Why is that expiration part of the design and not a flaw?
Yeah. Great question. So, and it's something that sometimes we struggle with in some parts of the world. In North America, here, it has been a standard. Continuing education has been a standard. Recertification has been a standard. And that is the international standard across the world. Because of the way that EMS evolves, we have to make sure that the clinicians who are stepping out onto the street and touching the patients, that those people are up to speed with the latest and greatest of what they should be doing so they can consistently meet that standard. The standard is changing. The standard is getting better all the time. So the only way to do that is to require recertification, and it ensures competency through the years.
And we know medicine changes every day. So, and always based on research. And we want that certification to be based on the latest research.
That is absolutely, yes.
So
Absolutely.
in Latin America, medical associations require courses or conferences to recertify. IPR uses an independent standardized exam. What difference does that make?
Well, actually, the gold standard now is to have a recognized exam for recertification. So there are some years ago, some parts of the medical world, let's say, allowed CE recertification. But now that is changing again, where they only allow CE recertification for a certain period of time, but then you have to go back and you have to take the exam again. And that is the same all the way through for physicians, all the way through EMS providers. So the
Great.
only way to be assured, because listen, you can go and sit in a classroom somewhere and take all of this CE, but that doesn't mean that you actually learned what you were listening to. So the only way to know if learning and if education has taken place is for you to take an exam which proves your competency in that domain or area.
Absolutely. Let's think about someone working on an ambulance in Guayaquil, let's say, or in Mexico City, or in Lima. What does IPR give them that their degree or field expertise doesn't?
Yeah, so your degree tells the world that you went through a program for a period of time, and the institution that organized that program has given you a course completion. But they are not an independent audit or body. They don't have the expertise and competency. So it doesn't matter where you are or what course you went to, or even if you went to the best university in all of Latin America. That doesn't matter. You have to have independent validation outside of the institution of where you studied and you have to have an exam that meets all of the international domains, and the questions have to be specifically written so that each of the questions are meeting all of the requirements of each domain. So that can only be done by an independent body, and that's why IPR exists, and that's why they're so good at what they do.
That's one of the things that we focused on immediately about 10 years ago when we first started working on IPR. I mean, how varied the degree of, again, education. It was in some places, it was just maybe a few months, not even a year. In some places, it was up to 3 years or more. And we thought there was definitely disparities that needed to be corrected. So I'm glad that you're talking about that.
Yeah, 100%. And, just remember that it's a fantastic thing when you can contact the IPR office and you have a candidate that's coming to look for a job with you, or perhaps they want to move from one country to another, one location to another. And, you have an international certification that over time, this can be recognized in all of the countries. And it just makes it so much easier for us all as paramedics to be able to be to be great at what we do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, in Latin America, many professionals look for a tangible benefit to certify. Promotion, better pay. What would you say to someone whose context doesn't yet offer that external reward?
Well, I think that if you're going to be a great clinician, you have to lead from the front. So I would hate to see the world that we would live in if the only time that we ever decided to improve our patient care was if it was demanded of us, or if they said, hey, you're not going to get paid as much if you don't do it. So as clinicians, what I've always loved about EMS is being surrounded by EMTs and responders and paramedics who every day want to be the best that they possibly can be in the world when they go and take care of their patient, right? So it's very, very important. Now, I will tell you that in the United States, it has been exactly the same when we first started out. Nobody was promised anything, but now everybody who has certifications through the IBSC, the vast majority of them all get paid additional money for having that level of certification. So, if you lead from the front, all of these things will follow, right? And I think that we got to do it that way.
And hopefully, besides, the ultimate goal of having the patient benefit from that great knowledge and that level of certification, in the end, that will bring some sort of reward to the provider, like it happened in the US. That would be great.
Right, exactly.
So, what would you say to a health system, a fire department, or a university in Latin America that hasn't yet integrated international certification into their processes?
Well, I would say to them that, hey, we're here. We are your partner. We guarantee to you that if you partner with IPR, your institution, your education, your paramedics, MTs, and first responders will all be better. And when they wear that IPR patch in partnership with your education and our certification, you can proudly look at those people out on the streets and know that you have educated, hired, and put out on the streets the best of the very best.
And we have seen that, Graham, by the way, in many parts of Latin America, people that display their patch with honor and pride. And that makes us feel great that we know what we're doing. Definitely is the right thing. Well, we've come to our last question. And basically, it's going to be a short one. So if you had to sum up in one sentence what IPR exists, what would it be?
That's simple. IPR exists to raise the standard of care in the emergency medical services and to save lives. That's
Love it.
why.
I don't think it could be more clear. Well, thank you. Thank you, Graham, very much. I think this has been a great first episode of IPR Talks, and we're looking forward to having more. And thank you for being with us today. We appreciate it.
It is my pleasure for sure, Juan. And thank you. Anything that we can do to help, reach out. We'd be happy to jump on at any time. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.